The day my parents handed my sister the dream room, they accidentally handed me their future too. Nobody realized it at the time. Not my mother, standing proudly in the hallway with paint samples in her hands. Not my father, carrying expensive furniture upstairs like he was building a palace for his favorite child. And definitely not my sister Ava, filming the entire thing for social media while pretending to cry from happiness. Meanwhile, I stood in the driveway beside 3 dusty storage boxes and a broken suitcase, waiting to see where I belonged. Turns out, I already knew. The servants' quarters sat behind the main house near the garage, a tiny detached room originally built decades ago for live-in staff my grandparents used to employ. Cracked walls, a leaking sink, one narrow bed, no air conditioning, no privacy. My mother smiled like she was doing me a favor. It's quieter back here. Better for studying. A lie so obvious even she didn't fully believe it. Ava walked past me carrying decorative pillows worth more than everything inside my room combined. You barely spend time at home anyway. That part was true. Because home stopped feeling like home years ago. Ever since Ava became the center of everything. Her dance competitions. Her private tutors. Her designer clothes. Meanwhile, my birthdays turned into forgotten dinners and last-minute gift cards. At first, I thought it was temporary. Then I realized something painful. Some families don't divide love equally. They invest it strategically. And my parents had already decided which child offered better returns. The worst part wasn't even the room. It was what happened that night. I returned from my part-time job around midnight and noticed lights still glowing inside the main house. Through the kitchen window, I could see my parents and Ava laughing together over takeout boxes. Nobody texted me. Nobody asked where I was. Nobody saved me food. That hurt more than the servants' quarters ever could. I unlocked my tiny back room quietly and stepped inside. Then stopped. Something felt wrong immediately. The desk drawer near my bed was slightly open. I never left it that way. My chest tightened. I crossed the room slowly and pulled the drawer open further. Empty. The small black notebook I kept hidden inside was gone. Cold rushed through me instantly. Not because the notebook contained emotional secrets. Because it contained numbers. Contracts. Account information. Proof. The one thing nobody in this family could ever discover. I searched the room quickly, checking under the bed, inside my boxes, behind the dresser. Nothing. Someone had been inside. And suddenly every laugh coming from the main house sounded different. More dangerous. I stepped outside again, moving silently toward the kitchen window. Inside, my father looked unusually relaxed, leaning back in his chair while Ava scrolled through luxury apartment listings on her phone. Then my mother said something that nearly stopped my heart. Once the transfer clears next month, we won't need to keep pretending anymore. The transfer. My stomach tightened instantly. Ava grinned. And he still has no idea? My father laughed softly. Not a clue. Every nerve inside me went cold. Because they weren't talking about me casually anymore. They were planning something. Something financial. Something hidden. And somehow, my missing notebook was connected to it. Then Ava said the sentence that changed everything. Imagine his face when he finds out the house was never supposed to belong to him anyway. Silence crashed through my mind. The house belonged to me? What were they talking about? I stepped back carefully from the window, pulse hammering violently now. For years, I believed I was the forgotten child in this family. But standing there in the dark behind the house, I realized something terrifying. They weren't just treating me differently. They were hiding something from me. I barely slept that night. Every sound outside the servants' quarters kept pulling me awake. The creak of tree branches. Cars passing in the distance. Footsteps I imagined but never confirmed. But none of it was louder than the sentence repeating in my head. The house was never supposed to belong to him anyway. By sunrise, I had already replayed every strange moment from the past 5 years. The sudden obsession my parents had with paperwork. The locked office my father never allowed me near anymore. The way conversations stopped when I entered rooms. At the time, I thought it was favoritism. Now it felt like concealment. I got dressed quietly and headed toward the main house before anyone else woke up. The kitchen sat empty except for my mother's laptop resting open on the counter. That alone was unusual. She guarded that thing like classified government material. I moved closer carefully. One glance at the screen made my pulse spike. Bank transfers. Large ones. Amounts big enough to change lives. Most were listed under a company name I recognized instantly. Blackstone Property Holdings. My chest tightened. Because officially, I owned part of Blackstone. Not publicly. Not legally connected to my name yet. But enough to know one thing immediately. Those transfers should not have been happening. I leaned closer to the screen, scanning the details faster now. Then I saw my name. Not fully. Just initials. But enough. Beside it sat one word. Beneficiary. Cold rushed through me. Footsteps echoed upstairs. I stepped back instantly just as the laptop screen went dark. A second later, my mother entered the kitchen wearing her silk robe, stopping abruptly when she saw me standing there. For half a second, real panic crossed her face. Then it disappeared behind a smile. "You're up early." Too smooth. Too fast. I forced myself to stay calm. Couldn't sleep. Her eyes flicked toward the laptop immediately before returning to me. Protective. Nervous. That told me everything. She knew I'd seen something. The silence stretched awkwardly until Ava finally walked downstairs scrolling through her phone. "Morning, servant boy." Normally I ignored comments like that. Today hit differently. Because now I knew they were hiding something far more serious than family favoritism. My father entered last, already dressed for work. The second he saw me, his expression tightened slightly. Another reaction. Another confirmation. Nobody in this house expected me to pay attention. That was their mistake. Breakfast stayed painfully quiet after that. Too quiet. Everyone seemed distracted by something unspoken. Then my father finally broke the silence. "We need to discuss future arrangements." My stomach tightened instantly. Ava smiled without looking up from her phone. "Here it comes." My father ignored her and looked directly at me. "You're old enough to start understanding responsibility." Responsibility. Interesting word choice from someone secretly moving money behind closed doors. He continued carefully. "This house requires maintenance. Taxes. Management." My mother jumped in immediately. "And Ava has always shown more interest in preserving family property." There it was. The setup. They were preparing me for something. Softening the ground before dropping whatever truth they planned to manipulate. I leaned back slowly. "What exactly are you saying?" Nobody answered immediately. That silence confirmed more than words ever could. Then Ava smirked. "Dad thinks it's time you stopped assuming everything belongs to you." My pulse slowed instead of rising. Because suddenly, something clicked. This wasn't confidence. It was desperation disguised as control. People only over-explain ownership when ownership is shaky. I looked directly at my father. Did something change legally? The question landed harder than expected. My mother's face stiffened instantly. Ava stopped smiling. And my father looked cornered. Only for a second. But enough. Then came the knock at the front door. Sharp. Unexpected. Everyone froze. My father frowned slightly and stood up. Nobody was supposed to arrive this early. He walked toward the entrance while the rest of us stayed silent. The second he opened the door, everything changed. A man in a dark gray suit stood outside holding a leather folder. Professional. Calm. Dangerous in the quietest possible way. "Good morning. I'm here regarding the estate review." Every ounce of color drained from my father's face. And, in that exact moment, I realized something even bigger was happening behind my back. Because whatever this man knew, my parents were terrified of it. Nobody invited the man inside immediately. My father just stood frozen at the door, gripping the handle tighter than necessary while the suited stranger waited calmly on the porch like he already knew the effect he had caused. The silence became uncomfortable fast. Then the man glanced past my father and looked directly at me. "There you are." 3 simple words. But they hit the room like a bomb. My mother's face tightened instantly. Ava slowly lowered her phone for the first time all morning. And my father looked terrified. Not annoyed. Not confused. Terrified. The man stepped inside without waiting for permission, smooth and controlled in a way that suggested he wasn't someone people usually said no to. He carried a thin leather folder under one arm and wore the kind of expensive watch that quietly announced power without needing attention. My father finally found his voice. "This isn't a good time." The man smiled politely. "Actually, legally speaking, it's the perfect time." Every nerve inside me sharpened. Legally. Estate review. Beneficiary. The pieces weren't connected yet, but they were getting dangerously close. The man turned toward me again. "You're Ethan, correct?" I nodded slowly. "Good." He extended a hand. "Daniel Mercer, probate attorney for the Calloway estate." The name hit me instantly. Calloway. My grandfather's last name. Not my father's. My grandfather died 8 years ago, and according to my parents, everything had already been settled. So why was an estate attorney standing in our kitchen now? Daniel calmly placed the leather folder on the counter. "I apologize for arriving unannounced, but recent financial activity required immediate clarification." My mother stepped forward too quickly. "There must be some misunderstanding." Daniel looked at her briefly. "There is." A pause. But not on my end. The tension inside the room thickened instantly. Ava crossed her arms, trying to sound confident. "Can someone explain what this is about?" Daniel opened the folder carefully, revealing stacks of legal documents clipped together with colored tabs. Then he said the sentence that changed everything. "This property was never legally transferred to your parents." Silence. Heavy, violent silence. I stared at him, unsure if I heard correctly. My father spoke first, voice sharp now. "That's not accurate." Daniel calmly slid one document across the counter. "Signed trust agreements say otherwise." My mother immediately stepped toward the papers, but Daniel closed the folder before she could touch anything. "Not until all parties are present." Parties. Plural. I suddenly felt like I was standing inside a conversation everyone else had been preparing for years. Daniel looked directly at me again. "Your grandfather established a protected inheritance before his death." Protected. The word echoed strangely in my head. Because I remembered something suddenly. A memory from when I was 12. My grandfather sitting beside me on the back porch, telling me one sentence I didn't understand back then. "Some people smile while stealing from you." At the time, I thought he meant strangers. Now, I wasn't so sure. Daniel continued calmly. "The estate, property holdings, and attached investment accounts were intended to remain under trust protection until your 20th birthday." My pulse spiked violently. 25th. I was turning 25 next month. Everything inside the room shifted. Every strange financial transfer. Every nervous conversation. Every sudden change in my parents' behavior. It all revolved around timing. My mother finally snapped. "This is ridiculous." But her voice cracked slightly. "Fear." Daniel didn't even look at her. "What's ridiculous is attempting unauthorized liquidation before trust release." Liquidation. My stomach tightened instantly. The bank transfers. They weren't random. They were moving money before control changed hands. Ava looked between my parents now, confusion replacing arrogance. "Wait, what does that mean?" Nobody answered her immediately. Because now even she realized something was wrong. Daniel finally turned another document toward me. "Based on current valuation, the estate attached to your trust exceeds $14 million. The room stopped breathing. 14 million. My father closed his eyes briefly like a man watching years of planning collapse in real time. And then Ava whispered something that revealed more than she intended. "Mom said he'd never find out until after the sale." Daniel slowly looked up from the documents. "The sale." That single sentence changed his entire expression. Calm disappeared. Now he looked serious. Dangerously serious. Because suddenly, this wasn't just family betrayal anymore. This was fraud. The kitchen exploded into overlapping voices. Ava immediately realized what she had revealed and stepped backward, panic flashing across her face. My mother turned toward her so fast it looked almost violent. Enough. But it was already too late. Daniel Mercer had heard exactly what he needed. And judging by the sudden stillness in his expression, The situation had just become far more dangerous for my parents. My father tried stepping in quickly. Nobody sold anything. Daniel calmly opened the folder again. Actually, someone tried. He pulled out another document and placed it on the counter. Commercial acquisition proposal. Pending approval. My pulse pounded harder as I scanned the visible details. A luxury development company had already offered nearly $22 million for the property. $22 million. For my grandfather's land. The same land my parents spent years pretending barely mattered anymore. Daniel looked directly at me. The transaction was structured to finalize 3 weeks before your 25th birthday. Exactly before the trust transferred fully into my control. Not coincidence. Planned. Every breath inside the kitchen suddenly felt poisoned. My mother crossed her arms tightly. We were protecting family assets. Daniel almost smiled. By secretly transferring ownership rights through shell corporations? Silence. That answer told him everything. And me. Ava looked completely lost now. Mom said the trust paperwork was outdated. My father shut his eyes briefly, like hearing those words physically hurt him. Because now even Ava understood she'd been used too. Just differently than me. Daniel carefully closed the folder again. There's another complication. The room went still. Another? My stomach tightened instantly. Daniel looked directly at my father this time. The IRS flagged several irregular withdrawals connected to the estate accounts last month. My father's face lost what little color remained. My mother immediately stepped forward. You said that was handled. Daniel's eyes shifted toward her sharply. Interesting choice of words. That tiny mistake exposed more than she realized. Because suddenly it sounded like my father wasn't the one running this operation. She was. A cold realization moved slowly through me. For years, I blamed both of them equally. But now I noticed something important. Every time legal details surfaced, my mother answered first. My father looked scared. And Ava looked manipulated. Daniel pulled another paper from the folder. Unfortunately, the situation escalated further yesterday evening. He slid the document toward me specifically. A formal petition was filed requesting emergency review of the trust beneficiary's competency. My brain stalled. Competency? Daniel nodded once. Someone attempted to argue you were financially unstable and unfit to manage inherited assets. The room tilted slightly around me. Because suddenly everything made sense. The servants' quarters. The isolation. The constant comments about irresponsibility. They weren't random cruelty. They were building a narrative. A story. One designed to make me look incapable before the inheritance transferred. Ava slowly looked toward our mother. Wait. Realization finally hit her too. Mom, you said that was only temporary until... My mother cut her off sharply. Stop talking. But fear had already entered Ava's face. Real fear. Because now she understood something terrifying. She wasn't the chosen child. She was part of the setup. Then Daniel said something none of us expected. There's also surveillance footage. Silence dropped instantly. My father looked up sharply. Daniel continued calmly. Someone accessed protected trust files inside Blackstone Property Holdings using stolen authorization credentials. My chest tightened violently. The notebook. The missing numbers. That's what they were after. Daniel looked directly at me. The credentials belong to you. Every eye in the kitchen snapped toward me instantly. And then came the twist I never saw coming. Daniel's expression hardened. Which means either someone framed you. A pause. Or someone inside this house has been using your identity for years. The air vanished from my lungs. My identity. Not just my inheritance. Not just the house. Someone had been pretending to be me. My mother suddenly grabbed the edge of the counter like she might collapse. And for the first time since this began, I saw genuine panic break through her control. Then my phone buzzed. Unknown number. One message. Check the servants' quarters. Floor vent. My pulse stopped. Because whoever sent that message knew exactly where I lived. The moment my phone buzzed, I knew two things instantly. Someone had been watching this family closely. And whoever it was knew far too much. I looked down at the message again. Check the servants' quarters. Floor vent. No name. No explanation. Just instructions. Daniel noticed the shift in my expression immediately. What is it? I hesitated for half a second too long. My mother noticed too. Her face changed instantly. Sharp. Alert. That reaction alone confirmed something important. She already knew what might be inside my room. I stepped backward slowly. Need some air. Nobody stopped me. But I felt every pair of eyes following me as I walked out of the kitchen and crossed the backyard toward the detached quarters. The evening air suddenly felt colder than before. Every window in the main house reflected shadows watching me move. By the time I unlocked the servants' quarters, my pulse was hammering hard enough to hurt. The room looked untouched at first glance. Tiny bed, leaking sink, dusty shelves. The same small prison they dumped me into while pretending it built character. But now I saw something different. The floor vent near the dresser looked slightly crooked. Recently moved. I crossed the room quickly and knelt beside it, fingers shaking as I pulled the metal cover free. At first, I saw nothing except darkness. Then my hand touched plastic. A hidden storage bag. Cold rushed through me instantly. I pulled it out carefully and unzipped it. Inside sat three things: a burner phone, several bank documents, and a thick envelope filled with photographs. My breathing stopped. The photos showed my parents meeting with people I didn't recognize outside office buildings, restaurants, private clubs. But one face appeared repeatedly. Daniel Mercer, the attorney. My mind struggled to process it. Why was Daniel secretly meeting them before today? Something about this felt wrong now. Very wrong. I grabbed the burner phone next. One unread message already sat on the screen. Do not trust the lawyer. Every nerve inside me tightened instantly. Footsteps suddenly creaked outside the quarters. I spun toward the door. Too late. It opened slowly. My father stood there, alone. For a second, neither of us moved. Then his eyes dropped toward the photographs in my hands. And his face collapsed. Not anger. Defeat. You found it. The sentence hit harder than shouting ever could. I stood up carefully. What is this? My father closed the door behind him before answering. Insurance. That made no sense. Insurance for what? He rubbed his face slowly like a man carrying exhaustion too heavy to hide anymore. Your grandfather knew your mother would try controlling the estate after he died. Mother. Not your mother. He meant his wife. My grandmother. The woman who passed away before I turned 10. Confusion crashed through me instantly. My father continued quietly. The trust wasn't created to protect the money. A pause. It was created to protect you. Everything inside me froze. Protect me from what? His eyes finally met mine directly. From your mother. The room tilted. No. Impossible. My mother was cold sometimes. Manipulative maybe. Obsessed with status and control. But dangerous? My father nodded slowly like he already knew how insane this sounded. She's not who you think she is. Every word made my chest tighter. Then he said something that shattered the ground underneath me completely. Your mother legally lost custody rights years ago. I stared at him, unable to breathe properly. What? The trust forced supervised access only. She hid it from you after your grandfather died. Nothing made sense anymore. He stepped closer carefully. When you were 13, she started using your identity to access dormant accounts tied to the estate. The room suddenly felt too small. Too hot. The stolen credentials. The fake transactions. My name attached to everything. She framed me before I even knew what was happening. I looked back down at the photos again. Then why is Daniel in these pictures? My father's expression darkened instantly. Because Daniel wasn't helping us. A pause. He was helping her. Cold flooded through my body. The lawyer. The estate review. The perfectly timed arrival. None of it was random. It was coordinated. And suddenly, I realized something terrifying. Daniel didn't come to save me. He came to make sure the final transfer happened exactly the way they planned. Then the burner phone buzzed again in my hand. One new message appeared. He knows you found the evidence. Run. The message stayed glowing on the burner phone like a warning too late to matter. He knows you found the evidence. Run. My pulse slammed against my ribs. I looked up at my father instantly, searching his face for answers, but all I saw was panic. Real panic. Not manipulation. Not performance. He grabbed my arm hard enough to make me flinch. Listen carefully. You need to leave right now. The urgency in his voice made the room feel smaller. I pulled my arm back slightly. If Daniel's working with her, why bring him here at all? My father exhaled sharply. Because your mother thinks she's smarter than everyone else. A bitter laugh escaped him. And usually she is. He pointed toward the photos in my hands. Daniel was supposed to pressure you into signing temporary review documents. Once you signed, they could delay your inheritance transfer indefinitely while moving the estate assets offshore. The kitchen conversation. The competency review. The years of isolating me. Every piece fit together now. They weren't stealing impulsively. They were building a legal cage around me slowly enough that I'd never notice until everything belonged to them permanently. But something had gone wrong. The notebook disappearing too early. The attorney arriving before they expected. Me asking questions. The timeline had broken. And now everyone was scrambling. The burner phone buzzed again. A photo this time. My stomach dropped instantly. Marcus. Two men were forcing him into a black SUV outside the coffee shop near campus. Alive. Terrified. But definitely being taken somewhere. My father saw the image and cursed under his breath. No. Cold flooded through me. They grabbed him because of me. Because he helped follow Vanessa. Because he knew too much. I looked toward the door immediately, but my father blocked me. You can't go after him alone. I clenched the phone tighter. Then help me. That sentence hit him harder than expected. For years, I stopped expecting protection from him. We both knew it. But now something changed in his face. Guilt finally becoming action. He nodded once. Get in my truck. 5 minutes later, we were speeding through downtown while night swallowed the city around us. My father drove faster than I'd ever seen before, one hand gripping the wheel while the other dialed numbers that nobody answered. Finally, he threw the phone onto the dashboard. They've already moved him. How do you know? Because this is what they do. The exhaustion in his voice sounded ancient now. People who become problems disappear quietly. That sentence chilled me more than anything else tonight. I looked at him carefully. Why stay with her this long? Silence filled the truck. Then he answered. Because the first time I tried leaving, your mother disappeared. The air left my lungs. My real mother. Alive somewhere. Hidden. Running. He tightened his grip on the wheel. Vanessa made me believe they'd kill her if I talked. Everything suddenly felt uglier than before. Not greed. Control. Fear. Years of it. The burner phone buzzed again. Another address. This time I recognized the location instantly. Blackstone Tower. The corporate building downtown connected to the estate holdings. Below the address sat 6 words. Midnight. Come alone if you want him alive. My father saw it too. Trap. Obviously. But Marcus was inside that trap. And whoever sent these messages knew I'd come anyway. The city lights blurred across the windshield as we approached downtown. Then my father suddenly slowed the truck near an empty intersection. His expression changed instantly. What? He pointed toward the mirror. Black SUV. Behind us. The same kind from before. Another one turned onto the street ahead. Then a third appeared from a parking garage. My pulse exploded. They found us. My father swore and slammed the gas pedal hard. The truck roared forward through the intersection just as headlights surged behind us. The chase started instantly. Engines screaming. Tires cutting through wet pavement. The SUVs stayed tight around us like trained predators. Not random criminals. Organized. Professional. One vehicle suddenly accelerated beside us. And through the tinted passenger window, I saw Daniel Mercer staring directly at me. Calm. Smiling slightly. Like this had been planned from the beginning. Rain started falling halfway through the chase. Heavy. Violent. The kind of storm that turns city lights blurry and roads dangerous within minutes. My father gripped the steering wheel tightly as the truck tore through downtown streets, black SUVs closing around us from both sides. Daniel Mercer's vehicle stayed closest. Steady. Controlled. Like he wasn't worried about losing us at all. That confidence terrified me more than speed. because it meant he believed this already ended. My father suddenly turned sharply into an underground parking structure beneath an old financial building. Tires screeched against wet concrete as we spiraled downward between levels. The SUVs followed instantly. No hesitation. They knew exactly where we went. My father's breathing grew heavier. We're running out of road. The parking levels narrowed lower underground, concrete pillars flashing past us in harsh white light. Then my father did something unexpected. He slammed the brakes. Hard. The truck spun sideways behind a support column just as headlights flew past our lane, overshooting the turn. Get out. My head snapped toward him. What? Now. His voice cracked with urgency. Before I could argue, he shoved the burner phone into my hand and pointed toward a maintenance stairwell near the back wall. Go to Blackstone Tower. My pulse spiked instantly. That's exactly where they want me. I know. He looked at me for a long second, and suddenly he didn't seem weak anymore. Just tired. Tired of failing. Inside that tower is the original trust server. Your grandfather built a dead man system into it years ago. I stared at him confused. If anyone tried stealing the estate illegally, the server recorded everything automatically. The realization hit instantly. Evidence. Not just money transfers. Everything. My father nodded. Vanessa's real accounts. Fake companies. The identities they used. His voice lowered. Including yours. Footsteps echoed somewhere above us now. They were coming. Fast. My father grabbed my shoulder tightly. Listen carefully. The fear in his eyes disappeared for the first time all night. No matter what happens next, do not let them make you hate yourself for surviving this family. The sentence hit harder than anything else. Because suddenly I understood something painful. My father wasn't asking for forgiveness. He was trying to save what was left of me. A crash echoed across the garage level. The SUVs found us. My father immediately shoved me toward the stairwell. Go. I ran. The stairwell door slammed behind me just as shouting erupted across the garage. Then came the sound of a punch. My father grunting. More voices. I froze halfway up the stairs. Every instinct screamed to go back. But then I remembered Marcus. The burner phone. The server. This wasn't about escape anymore. It was about ending it. I pushed upward through the stairwell until I burst back into the rain-soaked streets several blocks away. Downtown looked almost empty near midnight. Blackstone Tower rose above everything else, dark glass reflecting lightning across the skyline. Cold realization settled into my chest. My grandfather knew. Years ago, he knew people inside this family would eventually betray each other for money. And instead of trusting anyone, he built evidence. The burner phone suddenly buzzed again. One final message. Top floor. Come alone. No threats now. No manipulation. Just certainty. I entered Blackstone Tower through the side garage access using a keycard hidden inside the burner phone case. My grandfather planned even this. The elevator climbed slowly toward the top floor while rain hammered the windows outside. When the doors finally opened, Vanessa stood waiting near the massive glass office overlooking the city. Perfect suit. Perfect posture. Like none of this chaos touched her. But for the first time, I noticed something different. She looked cornered. Not powerful. Desperate. Daniel Mercer stood beside her holding a handgun low against his leg. And Marcus sat tied to a chair near the window. Bruised, but alive. Vanessa smiled faintly when she saw me step out. I knew you'd come. I looked directly at her. You ruined everyone around you. For a brief second, something human crossed her face. Sadness. Then it vanished. No. Her voice stayed cold. I simply understood something your family never did. People only matter when they're useful. Silence filled the room. And in that moment, I realized this was never really about inheritance. It was about a woman who spent her entire life turning love into leverage. But tonight, that leverage was finally running out. The storm outside shook the glass walls of Blackstone Tower hard enough to make the entire room feel unstable. But nothing inside that office was as unstable as Vanessa. For years, she controlled every situation with calm precision. Every smile calculated. Every conversation manipulated before it even began. Tonight, the mask was cracking. Daniel Mercer stepped slightly forward, the handguns still low but visible enough to keep the threat alive. "You should have accepted the room in the back and stayed quiet." I almost laughed hearing that, because now I understood the truth. The servants' quarters were never punishment. They were isolation. Distance from the house. Distance from conversations. Distance from discovering what they were stealing under my name. Vanessa folded her arms slowly. "Your grandfather made everything difficult after he realized he was dying." Not grief in her voice. Annoyance. Like his death had been an inconvenience to her plans. She walked toward the massive window overlooking the city lights. "He locked billions behind trusts, restrictions, identity verifications." Billions. The number hit harder than expected. Not millions. Billions. My entire life, they treated me like the forgotten child while secretly building their future around money attached to my name. Vanessa looked back at me calmly. "You were never important because of who you were." A pause. "Only because of what you owned." The words should have destroyed me. Instead, they clarified everything. Because people like Vanessa always reveal their weakness eventually. And hers was simple. She genuinely believed money mattered more than people. That belief blinded her. Marcus shifted slightly in the chair, catching my attention for half a second. Then I noticed it. His wrists. Loose. Not fully tied. My pulse steadied instantly. Good. Vanessa kept talking, unaware. "Your father tried fighting back years ago. Your mother tried exposing us." Her expression hardened. "That's why both of them became liabilities." I stepped closer carefully. "Where is my mother?" Vanessa smiled faintly. "Safe. Not kindness. Control. Alive only because keeping her hidden gave Vanessa leverage over my father." Daniel glanced toward the windows briefly. "We're out of time." Vanessa nodded once, then looked directly at me. "Sign the release documents and this ends quietly." She slid papers across the desk. Legal transfer forms. Control of the estate. Everything. I stared at the documents without touching them. And finally understood something important. Vanessa didn't win because she was smarter. She won because everyone around her kept reacting emotionally while she planned strategically. So I stopped reacting. Instead, I asked one simple question. "You really think you erased every copy?" For the first time all night, uncertainty crossed her face. Tiny, but real. I reached slowly into my pocket and pulled out the burner phone. Then pressed play. My grandfather's voice filled the office instantly. "If this recording activates, it means the trust was compromised internally." Vanessa's face drained of color. The recording continued. "All estate transactions, surveillance archives, biometric access logs, and identity fraud records have been automatically transmitted to federal authorities." Daniel swore under his breath. Marcus moved instantly, breaking free from the loose restraints and slamming the chair backward into Daniel's knees. The gun skidded across the floor. Chaos exploded through the office. Daniel lunged forward, but Marcus tackled him hard against the desk. Vanessa ran for the side exit. Too late. Elevator doors opened behind her. FBI agents flooded the floor. Weapons raised. Vanessa froze completely. For the first time in my life. She looked powerless. Not elegant. Not composed. Small. An agent grabbed Daniel while another secured the weapon. Vanessa slowly turned toward me one last time. And suddenly her voice sounded different. Not cold. Desperate. "You have no idea what this world really is." I looked directly at her. "Maybe." A pause. "But I know what you are." Silence crushed the room. Agents cuffed her hands while the city lights flashed behind the storm-covered windows. Years of manipulation. Gone. Just like that. 3 months later, the headlines spread nationwide. Corporate fraud. Identity theft. Estate manipulation. Financial conspiracy. Vanessa and Daniel became the center of a federal investigation stretching across multiple states. My father cooperated fully. And my mother finally came home. The real one. Alive. Healing. Free. But the most satisfying part wasn't the money. Wasn't the mansion. wasn't even watching Vanessa lose everything she spent years stealing. It was this. The one they locked in the servants' quarters became the one person they could never control again. Tell me in the comments that where are you watching this story from? Like this story and subscribe to this channel for more interesting revenge stories.